Hey y'all, welcome to the Tea+Jesus podcast, hosted by Tara McAdam and Kelsey Hamrick. We are two sisters who desire to grow in love for Jesus. You are not alone, and we want to come alongside you with challenges, laughter, questions, prayers, and eternal hope of the gospel. Whether you're on your way to work, folding the 10th load of laundry, or drinking a glass of sweet tea, we pray you are strengthened and filled with joy from these biblical truths today. Hey guys, I hope you all had a great weekend. Kelsey, did you have a great weekend?
Yes, I did. Quinn and I had some quality time while Logan was at her grandparents' and Colby was golfing. The time changed, so I am excited for more daylight. What about y'all? What'd y'all do?
Yeah, I'm so excited about more daylight too. We've been outside after nap time a lot more. But
yes,
our weekend was relaxing. We did not travel anywhere. We just stayed at home and just had, family time, and it was awesome. Today's episode is titled, Am I in Control of My Life? And we want to focus on the sovereignty of God because we think ultimately that is the heart issue that we have with control.
Yeah, I think we all struggle with control on some level. So I hope defining God's sovereignty helps y'all let go of control, and I hope that it's just freeing for your life.
My prayer for you today as our listener and for Kelsey and I is that as we dive deeper into sovereignty, that God uses the knowledge that we gain from his word and from wisdom we find in other trustworthy resources to grow us in our likeness of him. I hope it helps you add another tool in your Bible literacy bag and helps you have a higher confidence when reading and discussing and sharing the gospel with others.
I agree. Defining sovereignty not only helped me understand certain passages better, but has helped me grow in my walk with God to truly grasp the meaning of this word. It's also helped me understand more about just the character of God and who he is. And I think that is the most life-giving part about growing and understanding.
I know for me personally, I struggle with this topic of control a lot. I like to be in control of almost every situation in my life, and I always have been. Have you, Kelsey, ever struggled wanting to be in control?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I struggle every day with wanting to control my child, make her nap, listen, eat her veggies. I know all you mamas out there saying amen.
That's right. Amen.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. But it's so difficult to let go of control in parenting, in marriage, and just in relationships in general. And, I won't say that I'm a planner because that's never really been my personality. But after having a child, I definitely plan more than I used to. And predictability, if that's even a thing really, gives me this false sense of control.
Yeah.
And I say false sense of control because no matter what I quote unquote plan, I truly have no control over it. James chapter 4, verses 13 through 15 says, Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. So the key here is if it is the Lord's will, not my will and not my plan, because if it's not in his will, it's not going to happen. Proverbs 19:21 says, you can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail.
Oh, I love that verse. Both of those verses. I definitely struggle with this area of control bad. I feel like any event going on in our lives, like even day-to-day events, I truly like to plan every detail so there are no surprises. Almost like you were talking about the predictability. I would say I am what they call a super planner.
Yes, you are.
I mean, my planner,
confirm.
my planner I use every day even has a planner. I'm just kidding. But you get my point. I like
listen. If y'all follow her on Instagram for real, was it once a year or twice a year? I don't know. She gets her planner out and shows you all her little tabs and
stickers,
color coded. Listen,
yeah, I love it. And I mean, I don't think our family would function truly without it. Seriously. I mean, with 3 kids, one on the way, and doctor visits, therapy visits. visits,
Oh, yeah.
church events, you name it, ball practice. Like I mean, it just keeps me
That's why your life's more together than mine.
It's okay. There's hope. There's hope. But I like to have a plan A, plan B, and even backup plans for both of those plans. But when things start slipping out of my control, I mean, easily in my flesh, I start to doubt.
Yeah.
I start not trusting God. I start panicking. I start getting irritated super quickly. I start barking orders like a drill sergeant a lot of times. You know, just my whole mood changes. My whole demeanor can change when I feel like I am not holding on the reins. You know, It's awful. Kelsey, like what happens to you when you feel like in a situation when you're not in control? Not like you said, not that we're ever in control, but you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I feel like I used to respond more with anger, and that is something I struggled with for a long time. It's like if I felt like something wasn't in my control, I just got mad about it. But I do that. I mean, it's tough. That's an episode for a future date
for sure
on anger, because that can be really tough. But I think now in my life that I respond more with fear more often than I should. Like fear of like, oh my goodness, do we have enough money to get groceries this month? Or God, is my child going to go into cardiac arrest anytime she gets sick or startled? Or fear of, am I doing good enough as a wife and a mom? And like in those moments, it boils down to me not trusting in God and in the power of who he is.
Yeah, that's so true. And I know for me, like it just gives me a sense of security that because I'm controlling the situation, then I can expect the outcome of the situation.
Right.
Versus like trusting that God is in control and that his outcome for me and for my day or whatever event is far better than any outcome that I could ever expect on my own. Like growing up in church and going to different events and hearing pastors over the years, reading the Bible, reading other literature, hearing it on podcasts, the word sovereign or sovereignty is used a lot in the Bible and in church, and especially in today's Christian culture. And that leads me to the question, you know, what does sovereign or sovereignty mean? You know, this word is so important and so vital to our understanding of who God is and who we are. According to our best friends, Merriam-Webster, sovereign means of the most exalted kind or supreme power. When we take a look at the word sovereign, I think first, a lot of us may go to royalty, you know, like the Queen of England. May she rest in peace. I don't know if y'all like the crown, but anyways, that's a side note. Or, you know, we may think of just purely politics. But today, we want to focus on sovereignty as it applies to God and especially in God's word. We want to dive deep into what the Bible teaches us about this specific characteristic of God.
Yeah, when I heard the word sovereign, I used to think of a king or queen too. But the word sovereign, when it applies to our Creator, is just so powerful. I want to read this quote from Jackie Hill Perry about the sovereignty of God and our trust in him. She says, there's a level of trust where we have to say, what does God say about himself? Not only that, what does God say that he's going to do? God has promised that he's going to restore this world. God has promised that all things will work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. God has promised that our trials are doing something good in us. I think that's one odd but hopeful way to look at it. Even the bad things, God is sovereign over them, and they'll work out for my good. God is not distant from our suffering as if he was some God that could not hear and could not see and could not come down like the idols. In Exodus, God saw his people in suffering, and he came down to do something about it. God saw our suffering, saw our sin, saw our rebellion, and he did not ignore it. He came down himself in the person of Jesus Christ, and he lived and suffered too. I think there's a way in which we can say, man, even Jesus empathizes with my suffering in a way that I will never even understand. I love that quote because she lays out, oh my goodness, yes, she just lays out so clearly the character of God. I think when we say the word sovereign, we have to reflect on how much we value having control, but how so many things in this life are not in our control at at all. So when things aren't going like we planned, do we question God or do we trust in him? Do we trust in his control over all things being better than the way we would do it?
Oh, that's so good. I love this quote from Jackie Hill Perry, and it really hits the nail on the head. I especially love the part at the beginning where she said, "What does God say about himself?"
Mm-hmm.
If we pause and just truly reflect and meditate on that question alone, I mean, how can we ever think, ever, that we are in control of our lives?
Mm-hmm.
1 Chronicles 29:11-12 says, "Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty, for all that is in the heavens and in the earth is yours. Yours is the kingdom, O Lord, and you are exalted as head above all. Both riches and honor come from you, and you rule over all. In your hand are power and might, and in your hand it is to make great and to give strength to all." Oh, so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there have been many times, like in my life, where I've questioned, God, are you really here? Are you really in control? Like everything seems to be spiraling and nobody seems to be in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And there's been many times where I've been tempted to try to take control of my life from God. And I've shared in bits and pieces of my testimony where I did get in the driver's seat. But, I think that's a temptation, number one, to question, God, are you still there? And are you still driving? And even to go, hey, should I take over? You want me to drive for a little while? You need a rest? You need a break?
Yep.
But, I told you guys I'm a type A person who has a plan for my plan. And I like to have a plan and be in control of everything. And the Lord has shown me in so many areas that truly I have zero control. I have none. He is the driver. He is the orchestrator. He is the potter. He is the father. He is the judge. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I have learned quite a few things in the past decade as I've grown and the Lord has sanctified me. And I cannot control my husband. He's in training though. I cannot control my kids for sure. Can I get an amen?
No, amen.
And I can't control myself. I mean, even the Paul, like when he says, I do the things that I hate and the things that I long to do, I don't do. And I feel that way sometimes. I can't control myself, my daily life. I mean, seriously, my anything. Truly, I am not in control. And this is an area in my life that daily I have to surrender and lay down at his feet. I used to think I wanted to be in control of my life, but after realizing that I have no control and that I can only trust the one who is in control, it is so freeing.
Yeah.
I can relax. My life is not my own,
Yeah, it's so good. And I think one of the hardest things to let God have control over truly is our kids. I think that's when I realized I had trust issues with God was when I had Logan. God gave us our children and it's our instinct to protect them. And that can very easily turn into trying to control our kids and try to control the environment around them. But truth is, we can't control our kids. We do have certain control over, what they're exposed to and who they are around for a certain time. But ultimately we don't. God has a plan for their life, that period. He's in control of that. And they're going to be exposed to things and people who don't treat them well. They're going to be hurt. They're going to go through pain. And as a parent, that is so difficult to think about. But we have to give our kids to God. I know, as a new mom, I was terrified of SIDS. It scared me so much. And I had to get to the point where I broke and I just prayed to God. And I realized that my child doesn't belong to me. My child belongs to God. And that, same goes for our spouse. We can't control them. Same thing goes for us. Our lives belong to God, not to ourselves. And that it changes everything.
I completely agree. God has used parenting the most to show me time and time again that he is in control and I am not. But like I said earlier, my fleshly tendency is to have a plan so that there are quote unquote no surprises.
Right.
I always want to be in the know. I want to know what's coming next. I want to know what his plan is for the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, etc. But we don't have that privilege. I mean, even Jesus said he does not know the day or time that he will return to call us as believers, his bride home. Only the Father does. But what we do know is what what happens in the end.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, last chapter, last book of the Bible, Revelation 22, it is officially finished. It is done.
Mm-hmm.
We will be with our Father in heaven in a new glorified body for all of eternity, worshiping and dwelling with our God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only future I know for certain that I can place my hope in when my life gets chaotic and seems to be spiraling out of control.
Mm-hmm. You know, this thought I just had, like, how crazy is it that we desire so badly to have control over things, but then when we put our trust in God's sovereignty over our lives, we do get more freedom and peace than we ever could if we truly had control ourselves. I mean, what an enormous responsibility that would be. And I personally don't want it because I mess up enough.
That's right. I don't want to be God. Y'all don't want me to be God. It would be bad.
No, that's what I'm saying. And like sometimes I think we want control over the big things because like we don't understand why, or we think it's not fair. And so we're like, God, like, let me just have control over this. I don't think you know what you're doing, you know? But then we trust God in the little everyday things. But then sometimes I think we do the opposite.
That's right.
It's really easy to trust him with the big, hard things. And I think it's because those are the most obvious that we don't have control over. But then in the everyday little things, we are still just trying to put so much pressure on ourselves to just control everything.
Right. It's almost like, hey, God, I'll take some off your plate. It's okay.
Right.
I got it. I got this. You do the big load. I got the little load. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes. And a big part of this is prayer. Like I can tell when my prayer life is lacking, then I am resting in my own ways more than God's ways. And by resting in my ways, I mean like running around like a chicken with my head cut off, because that's exactly what it feels like.
Preach. Yes. Like I can totally relate. To everything you just said. This is just a little personal story, I guess, about Jeremy and I. But for those of you who don't know, Jeremy and I have 3 children and 1 on the way. My second child, my daughter Grayson, was born with a super rare genetic condition. We did not find out this information until she was 2 years old. She was delayed in talking. She didn't start walking until after physical therapy for a month, and she was 18 months old. Even then, once she was on her feet and walking, she kept falling and falling. She would also walk like a drunk person, kind of zigzagging and bumping into things all over the place. And after 3 trips to the ER for stitches on her chin in a matter of 6 months and constantly falling, getting bruises on her head, we decided with our pediatrician that we needed to investigate further to see if there was just something else going on that we don't see that's causing her to be off balance and fall all the time. We had an MRI done, x-rays on her hips and her legs, and genetic testing. The MRI came back perfectly normal. Her x-rays came back perfectly normal, and we had to wait almost 2 months for the results of the genetic testing. I remember I was at home and Jeremy was at work and the kids were all down for naps, and I get a call from UAB, and I answered, and it was a geneticist, and she asked if I had time to talk and if I could get some paper and a pencil. Immediately my heart sank. I knew something was up. And so I quickly grabbed the refrigerator grocery list off the fridge and a pen and said, okay, I'm ready. And she began to tell me that my daughter did have a rare genetic condition that they discovered from the genetic testing. She began to tell me all about the details while my brain was just swirling and whirling all around. Some of the things that I remember her saying was, she'll have this the rest of her life. The condition is progressive. We don't know at what rate, but it will get worse. There is no cure. You and your husband aren't carriers. This was just spontaneous at germination. Oh, and by the way, she's one of 2 toddlers in the world to have this specific type. So there's a lot we know about this of it in adults, but not very much we know about this in small children. So, again, I'm talking about my daughter, and, she's 4 now, and I don't want to disclose too much on her exact condition, just, or too many details just for her privacy one day. But all that to say that God has used this specific situation with our daughter to continue to teach us that He is sovereign. He is sovereign over our lives. He is sovereign over her life and over her condition. And we are 100% not in control. When she said spontaneous at germination, God made her exactly the way that He wanted to the moment that the sperm met the egg. And, parenting a daughter with a rare genetic condition that includes leg braces and helmets and physical therapy and occupational therapy and stitches. We've had a broken leg, constantly covered in bruises, and multiple developmental delays. And there's more. I mean, it's truly been one of the hardest things that the Lord has ever asked me to do or set before me to do. And every day I have to die to myself and surrender to the calling that He's placed on my life to be her mom. Jeremy and I have shed many tears. We have asked lots of questions. We have felt so unequipped to be her parents. And a lot of days we feel defeated and we feel hopeless and helpless, but we just continue to seek wisdom from the Lord and trust that God made her this way for His glory and that He chose for us to be her parents for a reason. And we just have to trust that He is in control, and we have to relinquish any control that we feel that we have over her and her situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's so difficult, and I've watched you and Jeremy walk through it from the very beginning before you knew what was going on. And even after getting the diagnosis, both of you were so faithful and so trusting in God. And that's such a difficult thing to do, again, just especially with our children. But just like you said, like God created her from the time that she was conceived exactly the way that she is and the way that she's meant to be. And He chose y'all to be her parents, and He's going to use this for His glory in some way. He is going to use her life. And that's so comforting. It's like you can have a comfort and you can have a peace about the situation that does feel hopeless, the situation that hurts about your daughter, because we have a God who is sovereign, who is in control, who is all knowing and all powerful. And how amazing is it that we can have comfort in the midst of something so difficult because of how great our God is.
That's so true. There's a set of verses that I cling to and I read over and over again when I struggle with control or trying to figure out what God is doing in my life. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance, and in your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. And that's from Psalms 139, 13 through 16. I think that someone once explained how God is sovereign like this. Our life is like a puzzle. God is the puzzle maker, and He is putting the puzzle together piece by piece. We can only see one piece of it at a time, but God has seen and sees the entire picture that the puzzle makes the whole time from the beginning. And we may not know what our final puzzle will turn out to be, but God does. And we must be fully present when He places each piece and trust that the picture He is making for our life is far better than any picture we could have ever imagined for ourselves.
Job says, I know that you can do all things and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. I think that's such a good definition of sovereignty in the Bible. For I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me. Then he says in the next verse, it's God talking about His goodness. My counsel shall stand and I will accomplish all my purpose. And that's Isaiah 46, 9 through 10. There is nothing that He purposes that He does not accomplish. Nothing can stop Him, and He does it all. And then you have Ephesians 1:11, one of the most sweeping statements of sovereignty in the Bible. According to the purpose of Him who works all things according to the counsel of His will. So whatever happens, it accords with the counsel of God's will.
Think about it. Everything leading up to Jesus's death on the cross, it says, for truly in this city they were gathered together against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the people of Israel, to do whatever your hand and your plan had predestined to take place. And that's from Acts 4:27 and 28. God's hand and God's plan is always at work.
Yes.
Always. Paul David Tripp says in his daily devotional, New Morning Mercies, from the date March 13th, honestly facing your lack of sovereignty over your own life produces either anxiety or relief. Anxiety is God forgetting. It is the result of thinking that life is on your shoulders, that it is your job to figure it all out and keep things in order. It's worrisome to think that your job in life is to work yourself into enough control control over people, locations, and situations, that you can rest assured that you will get what you think you need and accomplish what you think you need to accomplish. If you fall into thinking this way, your life will be burdened with worry and your heart will be filled with dread. But there is a much better way. It is God remembering. It rests in the relief that although it may not look like it, your life is under the careful control of one who defines wisdom, power, and love. In all of those moments when life is out of your control, it is not out of his control. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation, and he does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" That's from Daniel 4:34 and 35. You see, rest is not to be found in your control, but in God's absolute rule over everything. You will never be in a situation, location, or relationship that is not under his control. So that was a snippet from Paul David Tripp's book. But I love this. Anxiety is God forgetting, and rest is God remembering. Resting in God's plan for your life is peaceful and freeing.
Yeah, that's a great quote. And when he said facing our lack of sovereignty, it made me think how we don't often face it.
That's right.
We don't. We forget in our day-to-day tasks, but he's over all of it, every little detail. And it also makes me think, wow, he created me. He's in control of my life, but I continue to choose my own selfish desires over him over and over and over again. And it makes me so sad because he gives us this gift of saying, I love you. And he proved that love by sending Jesus for us. And he made promises that he's kept. And his word has been true from the beginning. And if we will just lean in and trust his word and his will with our lives, what an amazing gift. And all we have to do is accept it and trust in him. But we struggle to do that.
We do. We like to hold on to those reins that we think we're holding on to, you know. I've been studying through the major and minor prophets in the Old Testament, and I've just finished going through the book of Jeremiah. Talk about depressing. His story is so sad. He also wrote the book of Lamentations. I mean, literally, it's all lamenting. You know, that's sad. Anyways, side note, chapter 18 and 19 in the book of Jeremiah, God is talking to him, and he's explaining how he is the potter, and we are the clay. Jeremiah 18:6 says, "You are like the clay in the potter's hand, and I am the potter." This is God talking about his people. And I find this analogy or this visual of God being the potter and us being like the clay is just so beautiful. And it's a clear picture of God working us, molding us, kneading us, shaping us into children after his own likeness and according to his will. I know a lot of times when people feel like their life is out of control or they don't know what's going on, they quote the famous Bible verse that's on all the Hobby Lobby signs, from Jeremiah 29:11, same book of the Bible, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." This is a great verse, but you have to understand it in context. If you read the entirety of the book of Jeremiah and know the context of this verse, God is disciplining the Israelite people by sending them into exile because he had sent prophet after prophet and warning after warning. And the Israelite people were stiff-necked and they were stiff-necked and did not listen. They have continued to rebel against God's sovereignty over their own lives, and they chased after false gods and idols. So this verse talking about the plans I have for you and a future and a hope, and it's talking about, he was planning through their exile, even though it's discipline, to be molding them and shaping them and drawing them closer to him. But also he's saying, I have a plan. My plan is to give you a future. And the only future that we have is Jesus. He was pointing them to Jesus, who is his ultimate plan for all of God's children who believe in him. God is the potter and we are the clay. And I think the big question is, are you willing to let God be in full control and to shape you?
That's so good. That reminds me of that church song, "You are the potter and I am the clay." Good one. I think we all really have a hard time letting go of control, but that can be so freeing for us to do. A friend of mine is a songwriter, singer, and he wrote this song called Only a God Like You. His name is Brad Steele. Shout out to Brad for those of you who want to look it up, and we'll also add it into the show notes. But some of the lyrics say, "You aren't shocked by anything. You knew about this day. And though the paths of our lives change, you, Lord, remain." And what a beautiful description of how constant God is and how all-knowing he is. He's not shocked by anything. And that's so comforting because he loves us and he wants good for us. And he has shown that by keeping every promise that he has ever made. And another song that came to my mind is Promises by Maverick City. It says, "God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant and of faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you'll do just what you said. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me." I love that song. And one of my favorite lyrics is when he says, "And let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass."
That's so good.
It's so good. I mean, that song just makes me want to cry.
That song. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. And when our God speaks, it is powerful. He created the heavens and the earth by speaking it into existence. He gave Adam life just by breathing. He has kept all his promises through the ages, and we see that throughout the Bible and our lives today. Our God is in control, and once our hearts accept that, it turns into rejoicing and praising because we are free. We don't have to be anxious or worry about tomorrow or the next day or the next day. We just have to put our trust in our sovereign Father and we'll be eager to be obedient to whatever he calls us to do.
All right. Do we want to end the show letting our listeners know a little bit about us?
Ooh, okay.
All right. I have a question.
All right.
If you could pick out any two candy, only two, from the gas station when you stop on a road trip, what two candy items would you pick?
Okay. A white chocolate Hershey bar.
Like the cookies and cream one, or like a plain white chocolate?
Yeah, like the cookies and cream one, and the pink Starbursts.
Purely pink.
Mm-hmm.
Does that come in a roll or like
they
a bag?
they have like a whole roll that's just the pinks and reds.
Interesting.
But see, I would want like candy, but I would also want like chocolate. I feel like that's different. It's different.
My gosh. Well, say I'm weird. I like to get one salty and one sweet, so I would get a bag.
That's true. Which see, I was gonna say you didn't say salty though. You said candy.
Yeah. Well, say okay. So maybe we can rework the question. You're on a road trip. You're on a road trip, and you stop at the gas station. What snacks are you gonna buy?
Okay, I love Munchos. Y'all know the old school red bag, just Munchos. It's like basically a plain chip that is like covered in the most amount of sodium you could think of. So that with some chocolate, the cookies and cream Hershey's bar. Gotta have that salty and sweet.
You probably do a Dr. Pepper.
Probably, yeah.
I would get a bag of Munchies. So it's different. Yeah. They've got the Doritos, Sun Chips, Cheetos, and pretzels like all mixed together, like the cheese one. I could eat that whole bag by myself. and then I
don't share my snack.
Oh yeah. Well, I might a little bit with Jeremy, but that's it. And then I love to get their only at gas stations, but their Reese's covered pretzels. So it's like pretzels, but they've been dipped in peanut butter and have like chocolate all over them. Or peanut M&Ms.
I could go on and on with this topic because I mean Muncho, what is it? The Muddy Buddies. Oh, those things.
Oh yeah, Chex
so
Mix.
Good. Yes.
I forgot about that. Yeah, those are good. Well, anyways, guys, we're so thankful that you joined us today, and we hope that you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you back next week.
Bye, y'all.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for joining us today on the Sweet Tea and Jesus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast so you can continue along on this journey with us. Please leave us a 5-star review on Apple so others can find our podcast and be encouraged by these gospel conversations too. Follow us on Instagram for upcoming content, news about our podcast, and more. Thank you so much for listening, and we are looking forward to you joining us on our next episode. See y'all next time.